The sun rose over the village of Chetu, painting the thatched roofs golden as it climbed into the sky. The air was thick with the smells of roasting maize and the rhythmic sounds of pestles pounding yam in mortars. Life moved at its usual pace, yet for Ndudi, every day felt like a battle she couldn't win. She was up early as always, sweeping the compound she shared with her husband, Kemba. Her hands moved mechanically, but her thoughts churned. 5 years of marriage, and she had not borne a child. To the villagers, this was an unforgivable failure. Ndudi, barren like the desert, the voices echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of her shame. She had heard the whispers and laughter when she passed the women at the market, their eyes filled with pity or scorn. That morning, Kemba emerged from their hut, his expression unreadable. He was a tall, imposing man, respected by the villagers for his hunting prowess. But lately, his respect for Ndudi seemed to have waned. "Good morning, Kemba," she greeted, her voice soft. He grunted in response, barely meeting her eyes. He sat on a wooden stool, sharpening his hunting knife. The sound of metal scraping against stone filled the silence between them. "Kemba, is something wrong?" Ndudi ventured. Kemba sighed heavily, finally looking up at her. "Ndudi, I have made a decision. I cannot wait any longer. It's been 5 years and you have not been able to conceive or bear a child for me. I have made up my mind, I must take another wife." The words struck her like a blow, and for a moment, she couldn't breathe. "Another wife?" "Yes," Kemba said firmly. "I have no choice. My family line must continue. If you are unhappy with this, you may leave." Ndudi's heart clenched. Where could she go? She could not go back to her family. This was her home. Her voice trembled as she replied, "I will stay, Kemba. This is my home." Kemba nodded, satisfied. "Good. Lola, my new wife, will arrive in a week." When the day arrived, the village was alive with excitement. Lola, the young woman chosen as Kemba's second wife, was celebrated even before she stepped foot in the compound. Drummers played vibrant rhythms as a procession led her to her new home. Ndudi stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart heavy. Lola was everything she used to be, young, beautiful, and full of life. Dressed in a vibrant blue wrapper adorned with intricate beadwork, she looked radiant. The villagers showered her with blessings and praises. "Kemba has chosen well," one woman whispered loudly enough for Ndudi to hear. "This one will give him many sons. Look at the size of her hips. This is a real woman, full of life and very fertile. Not dried up like some people." Ndudi forced a smile, though her chest tightened with every word. As Lola entered the compound, Kemba's face lit up with joy. He welcomed her warmly, guiding her into the house that now belonged to both women. Ndudi stayed back, feeling like a ghost in her own home. That evening, Ndudi prepared a meal for the family. As she served the food, Lola's laughter rang out, a stark contrast to the silence that had filled the house for years. "Ndudi," Kemba called, his tone dismissive, "bring more palm wine for me and my wife." The word wife stung, though Ndudi obeyed without a word. She felt invisible, reduced to a servant in her own marriage. Months passed, and the inevitable happened. Lola announced she was pregnant. The news spread through the village like wildfire, igniting a wave of celebration. The women praised her fertility, while the men congratulated Kemba. The day Lola gave birth to a baby boy, the village erupted in joy. Kemba organized a grand celebration, inviting everyone to feast and dance. Drums thundered, and villagers danced around a blazing fire. Men drank palm wine, while women sang songs of praise for Lola and her newborn. Ndudi, however, sat in the shadows, watching the festivities with a heavy heart. She had spent the day preparing food for the celebration, her hands blistered from hours of work. Now, she was an outsider at her husband's feast. Ndudi, one of the village women, sneered, approaching her. "Why do you sit here alone? Are you not happy for Lola? Or are you jealous because she gave Kemba what you could not?" Ndudi met the woman's gaze, her voice steady. "I am happy for her. A child is a blessing." The woman laughed. "If only you knew what that felt like." She walked away, leaving Ndudi alone with her thoughts. As the night deepened, Kemba approached Ndudi. His face was flushed from drink, but his words were sharp. "Why are you sulking?" he demanded. "This is a day of joy. Act like it." "I am tired, Kemba," Ndudi replied quietly. "Tired? You have no reason to be tired," he scoffed. "Lola gave me a son. She is the one who deserves praise, not you." His words cut deeper than she thought possible, but Ndudi held her composure. She would not let him see her cry. The sun was high over the village of Chetu, casting its golden rays over the thatched roofs and dusty pathways. Inside the compound, Ndudi hummed a soft tune as she cradled the baby boy, his small fingers curled around hers. His mother, Lola, was nowhere in sight. "Lola!" Ndudi called out gently, her voice carrying across the compound. A soft rustle came from the hut, and Lola emerged, her skin glistening with a fresh layer of shea butter. She wore a vibrant wrapper, her hair intricately braided, and her wrists jingled with bangles. She looked radiant, but her demeanor was indifferent. "Ndudi, why are you shouting?" Lola asked, narrowing her eyes. "The baby has been crying," Ndudi replied. "I thought you would want to." Lola waved a hand dismissively. "I was busy. You seem to be handling him just fine. Besides, I can't have him ruining my hair or this dress. Kemba loves it when I look my best." Ndudi sighed but said nothing. She adjusted the baby in her arms, his cries now soft whimpers. "He's hungry, Lola." "Then feed him." Lola snapped. "You're always holding him anyway, you might as well take full responsibility." Days turned into weeks, and the pattern continued. Lola would vanish for hours, either to visit friends or to pamper herself. Ndudi became the baby's caretaker, feeding him, bathing him, and even singing him to sleep. Despite the villagers' whispers and pointed stares, she found solace in the innocent eyes of the child. "Look at her," one woman whispered as Ndudi passed with the baby strapped to her back. "Pretending to be a mother. Does she think carrying him around will make her less barren?" "She's pathetic," another added. "Carrying a child that isn't hers. A barren woman trying to play mother." Both women broke out into a mocking laugh. The words stung, but Ndudi kept her head high. Deep down, she knew she wasn't pretending. She loved the child as if he were her own. One night, the baby's cries pierced the stillness of the compound. Ndudi hurried into Lola's hut, only to find her sound asleep, undisturbed by the noise. She gently picked up the child and tried to soothe him, but nothing worked. Desperate, she took him into her room and sat on the bed and held him close to her chest. She whispered, rocking him gently. "Mama is here." The baby moved his mouth close to her chest, searching for her breast. In a moment of desperation, she guided him to her breast. To her astonishment, the baby latched on, and his cries subsided. Ndudi froze, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and fear. She slept off, the baby sucking on her breast. The next morning, she felt a strange tenderness in her chest. When she checked, she found milk. She stared at herself in disbelief, torn between guilt and an overwhelming sense of joy. She knew it was wrong, but the baby needed her, and she couldn't bear to see him suffer. The milk also made her feel like a real woman, a mother. Something she never thought she would ever feel like. The village was alive with celebration for the New Year festival. Drums echoed through the night as men drank palm wine and women danced in colorful wrappers. Ndudi sat at the edge of the crowd, the baby snugly wrapped on her back. She watched as Kemba laughed with his friends, his arm draped around Lola. As the night deepened, Kemba's eyes wandered to Ndudi. He noticed her quiet strength, the way she cared for the baby without complaint. His heart, heavy with guilt, pulled him toward her. Later that night, after the festivities, Kemba staggered drunkenly into Ndudi's hut. She sat by the bed, gently tapping the baby who was asleep in his crib beside her bed. "Kemba," she said, startled by his presence. "What are you doing here?" He sank onto her bed, his gaze softening. "Ndudi, my first love, I owe you an apology." She looked at him, her heart racing. "For what?" "For everything," he said. "For neglecting you, for not seeing your worth. You've been nothing but kind, and I've been a fool." Before she could respond, he took her hand. "Let me make it up to you." That night, for the first time in years, Kemba held Ndudi close. She felt a flicker of hope reignite in her heart. The days that followed were completely different from the years of neglect Ndudi had endured. Kemba began bringing her small gifts, colorful beads, new wrappers, and spent more time in her company. This did not go unnoticed by Lola. "Kemba," Lola snapped one evening as he returned from the market with a bundle of fabric for Ndudi and Lola. "Why do you waste your money on her?" "It's not a waste," Kemba replied curtly. "She is my wife and she deserves it." "She's barren," Lola hissed. "What has she done to deserve anything?" Kemba's eyes hardened. "She has done more for this family than you can imagine." The tension between them grew, and Lola's jealousy festered. She began to lash out, neglecting the baby even more and accusing Kemba of favoring Ndudi over her, the mother of his only child. One afternoon, while Ndudi was asleep with the baby beside her, Lola returned from visiting a friend. She stepped into Ndudi's room and froze at the sight before her. Ndudi lay on the bed, the baby sucking on her breast. A scream tore from Lola's throat, waking Ndudi. She jumped up, clutching the baby. "What are you doing?" Lola shrieked. "You witch! You barren witch!" "Lola, please, I can explain," Ndudi stammered, tears streaming down her face. Lola stormed out of the hut, shouting for the villagers. Within minutes, a crowd gathered, murmuring in shock as Lola accused Ndudi of witchcraft. "Kemba," Lola cried. "Come and see what this barren woman has done to our child." Kemba pushed through the crowd, his face dark with anger and confusion. "What is going on here?" Lola pointed at Ndudi, who stood trembling, the baby in her arms. "She's been feeding my child with her barren breasts. She has bewitched him." Kemba turned to Ndudi, his voice stern. "Is this true?" Ndudi's voice broke as she answered. "Yes, Kemba. But I only did it because the baby needed me. He was always crying, always hungry. I couldn't watch him suffer and my breast began producing milk for him." The crowd erupted in whispers, their eyes filled with judgment. Kemba raised his hand, silencing the crowd. "Enough. Everyone, leave my compound." The villagers hesitated, but Kemba's tone left no room for argument. As they dispersed, Ndudi fell to her knees before her husband, tears streaming down her face. "Kemba, please forgive me," she sobbed. "I never meant to hurt anyone. I love him." Kemba sat beside her, his voice soft. "I know, Ndudi. I know your heart, and I know you acted out of love. But the villagers won't understand. For now, you need to go to your parents' village. It's the only way to calm things down. Ndudi's heart shattered, but she nodded. I will go, Kemba. But please, take care of him. Kemba promised, and the next morning, Ndudi left, her heart heavy with sorrow. With Ndudi gone, the household grew tense. Lola's neglect of the baby worsened, and Kemba's patience was running out. Lola, he said one evening as she sat making her hair while the baby cried, can't you see he needs you? You never cared when Ndudi was doing everything, Lola responded. Why should I now? Because you're his mother. Kemba snapped. And a wife should bring peace to her home, not chaos. Their arguments became frequent, and Kemba found himself longing for Ndudi's gentle presence. One night, as Kemba sat alone by the fire, he reflected on his decisions. He thought of Ndudi's unwavering kindness, her quiet strength, and the way she had brought harmony to his life. He decided it was time to bring her home. The road to Ndudi's family village was long, stretching across rolling hills and through dense forests. Kemba walked in silence, accompanied by two elders from Chetu, their footsteps stirring up dust in the dry season. The gifts he carried, a healthy goat, bundles of yams, and brightly colored wrappers, were tokens of his remorse, but they felt woefully inadequate for the pain he had caused. When they arrived at the small village, Ndudi's father sat in the middle of his compound, his face etched with weariness. His wife sat just behind him, her arms crossed, her sharp eyes scanning Kemba with a mixture of hurt and distrust. Kemba, the old man began, his voice heavy with emotion, what brings you here after what you've done to my daughter? Kemba knelt before him, lowering his gaze. Father, I am here to seek forgiveness. I was blinded by my own desires and the pressures of the world. I failed Ndudi and allowed her to suffer when she deserved better. The elders from Chetu stepped forward, adding their voices to Kemba's plea. For hours, they spoke, explaining his regret and his vow to treat Ndudi with the honor and love she deserved. Finally, the old man sighed. Kemba, words are easy. My daughter has endured great pain. If she wishes to return, it will be her decision. He gestured toward the hut where Ndudi was. When Kemba entered, she looked up, her expression guarded. Kemba, she said quietly, why have you come? He knelt before her, his voice trembling. Ndudi, I have wronged you. I let my desperation and pride destroy the love we once had. I am here to ask for your forgiveness and to bring you home. Not because I deserve it, but because our home is empty without you. Ndudi stared at him for a long moment. Her heart was torn between the love she still felt for him and the pain he had caused. Finally, she nodded. I will return, she said, her voice steady. But know this, Kemba, I am coming back for the sake of our family and the love I have for you as my husband. Please, promise me that everything will be different this time. The return to Chetu was quiet but tense. Ndudi's reappearance in the compound was met with mixed reactions. Some villagers offered polite nods, while others whispered behind their hands, wondering why Kemba had brought her back. Lola, however, was openly furious. As Ndudi stepped into the courtyard, Lola appeared in the doorway, her hands on her hips and her eyes blazing with anger. So, the barren witch has come crawling back, she spat. What are you here for, Ndudi? To steal what little joy this home has left. Lola, Kemba warned, his voice low, this is still her home and you are not to speak to her that way. I will not have it. Lola let out a bitter laugh. Her home. She gave up any claim to this house when she failed to give you an heir. Look, woman, let me not see you anywhere near my child, if not, she shouted at Ndudi. Ndudi said nothing, her face calm, though her heart clenched. She quietly entered her hut, determined not to let Lola's words break her resolve. But Lola's taunts didn't stop. Every day, she found a way to mock Ndudi, calling her a barren witch and reminding her that she was less of a woman. When Ndudi tried to help with the baby, Lola snatched him away. "Don't touch my child," Lola hissed. "If you're so desperate for a baby, why don't you have one of your own?" Ndudi endured it all in silence, retreating to her room each night to pray for peace and a child of her own. Weeks passed, and Ndudi began to notice subtle changes in her body, tenderness in her breasts, tiredness, and a strange feeling like when she was still breastfeeding Lola's son, which she wasn't doing anymore. One morning, as she swept the compound, she stopped, realizing she hadn't seen her period in weeks. Her heart raced as she hurried to the local clinic. The midwife, a cheerful woman with a kind face, ran a quick test and smiled broadly. "Ndudi," she said, her voice warm, "my God, you're pregnant. Congratulations." Ndudi gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Nurse, are you sure? After all these years? Is that even possible?" The midwife nodded. "God has heard your prayers. You're going to be a mother." Overwhelmed with joy, Ndudi rushed home to share the news with Kemba. She found him sitting in the living room. "Kemba," she called, her voice trembling. He looked up, concern flashing across his face. "What is it, Ndudi? Are you unwell?" "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "I'm just coming from the clinic, here is the lab result." "Kemba, God has finally blessed us with a child." Kemba jumped up and rushed to her, lifting her off the ground in a joyous embrace. "Ndudi, this is the happiest news I've ever heard. Thank you for not giving up on us." Their celebration was short-lived, however. Lola, who had been eavesdropping, stormed into the living room. "Pregnant?" she mocked. "Or are you just pretending to gain Kemba's love?" "Lola, enough." Kemba snapped. "This is a happy moment for our family. Don't spoil it with your bitterness." Ndudi, unwilling to let Lola's words steal her joy, walked away with her head held high and a big smile on her face. As Ndudi's pregnancy progressed, the household grew more divided. Kemba doted lovingly on Ndudi, making sure she ate well and rested, while Lola sulked, her jealousy boiling over. But it wasn't long before the truth about Lola's own secrets came to light. One afternoon, a palm wine tapper climbed a tall tree to tap wine in the bush. As he reached the top, he spotted Lola in a secluded clearing below. She wasn't alone. She was with a young man known in the village for his wild ways, and they seemed to be having a lover's moment. The tapper shouted down, startling them. "Lola. Married woman. What are you doing there? I can see you clearly." Lola and the man jumped to their feet and ran, but the damage was done. By evening, the tapper's tale had spread like wildfire through the village. Other villagers came forward, and soon they began sharing stories of seeing Lola sneaking off with the same man on different occasions. When Kemba heard the news, he was furious. He stormed home, his face filled with anger. "Lola," he shouted, his voice echoing through the compound. She appeared, her face pale. "Kemba, what's wrong?" "Don't play innocent," he growled. "I've heard everything. Is it true? Have you been sneaking around with that useless young man?" Lola stammered, tears filling her eyes. "It's not what it seems, Kemba. Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" he roared. "How long has this been going on? Was it before we got married?" Lola's shameful silence confirmed his suspicions. "Answer me," Kemba demanded. Finally, she broke down. "Yes," she sobbed. "It started before we got married. I was already 2 weeks pregnant when you came for me. I promise you, it will never happen again, please my good husband. Forgive me." Kemba staggered back, his face a mask of betrayal. You used me to cover your shame. And I've been raising another man's child. Lola fell to her knees, pleading. Kemba, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. There's no forgiveness for this, he said coldly. Leave my house. Take your lies and your child with you. That night, Kemba sat with Ndudi, his shoulders slumped in defeat. My desperation for a child destroyed everything, he said, his voice heavy. I let my pride ruin the love and peace we once had. Ndudi placed a hand on his. We all make mistakes, Kemba. What matters is how we move forward. But her own heart was breaking. She had grown to love the child she cared for, and now he was gone. I loved that boy, Kemba, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. He was my son, even if he wasn't mine by blood. Kemba wrapped his arms around her. We'll heal together, Ndudi. And we'll raise our child with love. As Kemba comforted her, Ndudi gasped, clutching her belly. Kemba, my water. I think the baby is coming. Panic and excitement gripped him as he rushed out to call the midwife. Within minutes, the hut was bustling with activity. Ndudi's cries filled the air as the midwife worked tirelessly. Push, Ndudi, the midwife urged. You're almost there. After what felt like an eternity, a baby's cry pierced the night. It's a boy, the midwife announced. Before Ndudi could catch her breath, the midwife screamed, I see another head. Push, she shouted. A second baby's cry pierced the night. And a girl. Kemba stood frozen, tears streaming down his face. He cradled the twins gently, marveling at their tiny features. You've given me more than I ever deserved, he said, placing the babies in Ndudi's arms. The weeks that followed were filled with joy. The twins brought new life to the household, and the villagers, once so quick to judge, now praised Ndudi's resilience and strength. Kemba organized a big party to celebrate the birth of their children. He showered Ndudi with praises as she danced beautifully. Their joy was full.